On the morning of September 15th, 2019, in the quiet suburban streets of East Point, Georgia, 28-year-old Keisha Williams laced up her bright pink Nike running shoes for what would become the most talked-about disappearance in Atlanta's recent history. The sun was just beginning to peek through the oak trees that lined her neighborhood, casting gentle shadows across the pavement she had pounded thousands of times before. What started as an ordinary Tuesday morning ritual would transform into a mystery so complex and shocking that 3 years later, when her car was discovered running in an abandoned parking lot with a stranger's dead body behind the wheel, it would leave investigators questioning everything they thought they knew about missing persons cases. Keisha Williams wasn't just another missing person statistic. She was a vibrant marketing coordinator at one of Atlanta's most prestigious advertising firms, known for her infectious laugh and unwavering dedication to her community. Born and raised in East Point, she was the eldest daughter of Robert and Diane Williams, a hard-working couple who had instilled in her the values of perseverance and family loyalty. Her relationship with boyfriend Marcus Thompson had blossomed over 2 years into something beautiful and stable. Friends often joked that they were the couple everyone wanted to be like. Keisha had everything going for her: a promising career, a loving partner, and deep roots in a community that adored her. Every morning at exactly 6:15, Keisha would step out of her front door and begin her 45-minute running route through the tree-lined streets she had known since childhood. This wasn't just exercise for her. It was meditation, preparation for the day ahead, and a promise she had made to her late grandmother, who always said, "Baby girl, start each day by moving your body and clearing your mind." The routine had become so predictable that Mrs. Henderson next door would brew her morning coffee, knowing Keisha would pass by at 6:22. Mr. Johnson would time his newspaper retrieval to wave at her familiar figure jogging past his mailbox at 6:28. On that fateful September morning, Keisha followed her routine with the same precision she had maintained for over 3 years. She kissed Marcus goodbye at 6:10, grabbed her water bottle from the kitchen counter, and stepped into the crisp autumn air that carried the promise of a beautiful day ahead. Marcus watched from the bedroom window as she stretched against their front porch railing, her bright pink shoes catching the early morning light. She turned back toward the house, flashed him that radiant smile he had fallen in love with, and began her steady jog toward Riverside Park. It would be the last time anyone who loved Keisha Williams would see her alive. Keisha's morning routine was designed with military precision. She would return home by 7 o'clock sharp, shower quickly, and settle into her home office by 7:45 for her 8 o'clock conference call with clients on the West Coast. This call was crucial. She had been preparing for weeks to present a campaign that could secure the biggest contract of her career. When 7:30 arrived and Marcus returned from his own workout to find the house still empty, a small knot of concern began forming in his stomach. By 8:15, when Keisha's phone went straight to voicemail for the 5th time, Marcus knew something was terribly wrong. He called her office, only to learn that she had missed her conference call entirely, something that was completely unprecedented in her professional life. Her supervisor, Jennifer, expressed genuine shock, explaining that Keisha had never missed a meeting without advance notice in her 4 years with the company. Marcus began driving her usual running route, his heart pounding as he searched every street corner and park bench for any sign of her. When Keisha failed to show up for her younger sister Tamika's birthday dinner that evening, the Williams family knew their worst fears were being realized. Keisha had been planning this celebration for weeks, even taking time off work early to help with decorations. Her absence sent shockwaves through the tight-knit family gathering. Robert Williams, a man of few words but decisive action, immediately contacted the East Point Police Department. Diane Williams began calling every hospital within a 50-mile radius, her voice trembling as she described her missing daughter to countless receptionists and nurses. The Williams family had always been each other's anchor through life storms. Robert worked double shifts at the manufacturing plant while Diane cleaned offices downtown, but they never missed a family dinner on Sundays or failed to support each other through challenges. Keisha, as the eldest, had become the family success story, the first to graduate college, the one who helped her younger sisters with homework and career advice. Now, as they sat in their living room making missing person flyers, That unbreakable bond would be tested like never before. Within 24 hours of Keisha's disappearance, the East Point community had transformed into a search and rescue operation unlike anything the neighborhood had ever witnessed. Word spread through social media, church networks, and local businesses with lightning speed. By Thursday morning, over 200 volunteers had gathered at Riverside Park, armed with flashlights, water bottles, and an unwavering determination to bring Keisha home. The volunteers ranged from teenagers to elderly residents, all united by a single purpose. They organized into search teams, each assigned specific grid sections of the park and surrounding neighborhoods. Local restaurants donated sandwiches and coffee, while nearby churches opened their doors as coordination centers where families could rest and receive updates. The search teams methodically combed through every inch of Riverside Park, checking behind every tree, under every bridge, and along the winding creek that bordered the eastern edge of the property. Volunteers waded through thick underbrush, calling Keisha's name until their voices grew hoarse. They searched abandoned buildings, construction sites, and even knocked on doors of vacant houses in the area. Local businesses printed thousands of missing person flyers featuring Keisha's bright smile and distinctive braids. These flyers appeared on every telephone pole, storefront window, and community bulletin board within a 20-mile radius. The hashtag Find Keisha Williams began trending across social media platforms, spreading her story far beyond Georgia's borders. The initial police response reflected a troubling pattern that many families in similar situations know all too well. When the Williams family first reported Keisha missing, officers suggested she might have simply needed some space or decided to take an impromptu trip. They pointed to statistics showing that most missing adults return within 72 hours, often having left voluntarily. Detective Rodriguez, the first officer assigned to the case, seemed more interested in questioning Marcus about their relationship than organizing a proper search. He asked invasive questions about whether they had been fighting, if Keisha had seemed depressed, or if she might have been seeing someone else. The family's frustration grew with each dismissive response. Despite the massive community effort and countless hours of searching, no trace of Keisha Williams was found. Search dogs were brought in to follow her scent, but the trail went cold just half a mile into her usual running route. Helicopters circled overhead, their searchlights cutting through the darkness as volunteers continued their efforts well into the night. Local news stations picked up the story, broadcasting Keisha's photo during evening broadcasts and morning shows. Tips poured into the police department, reported sightings from gas stations, shopping centers, and highway rest stops across 3 states. Each lead was investigated thoroughly, but none provided any concrete evidence of what had happened to the missing marketing coordinator. 3 days after Keisha's disappearance, a city maintenance worker made a disturbing discovery while clearing debris from a storm drain on Campbellton Road, nearly 3 miles from her running route. Keisha's iPhone, completely destroyed and waterlogged, was wedged between concrete slabs deep within the drainage system. The phone had been deliberately smashed, its screen shattered into countless pieces, and its internal components scattered. Forensic technicians worked for hours trying to recover any data, but the device had been so thoroughly destroyed that even basic information like recent calls or text messages was irretrievable. When investigators began reviewing security footage from businesses along Keisha's running route, they discovered something deeply troubling. Every single camera that would have captured her morning jog had been vandalized the night before her disappearance. Spray paint-covered lenses, wires had been cut, and recording equipment had been deliberately damaged. The timing was too precise to be coincidental. Someone had carefully planned this operation, studying the area and identifying every potential source of surveillance. This level of premeditation suggested that Keisha's disappearance was not a random crime of opportunity, but a calculated abduction. Back at the Williams residence, Keisha's silver Honda Accord sat untouched in the driveway, exactly where she had parked it the night before. Her purse remained on the kitchen counter with her wallet, credit cards, and identification still inside. Her work laptop was open on the dining room table, displaying the presentation she had been preparing for her morning conference call. Most telling of all, her bed was neatly made, her work clothes laid out for the day, and her coffee mug sat clean and ready beside the coffee maker. Everything indicated She had planned to return home within the hour. Detective Sarah Chun, a 15-year veteran of the Atlanta Police Department, was assigned to the case on September 18th when the initial officer requested additional resources. Unlike her colleague, Chun immediately recognized the red flags that pointed to foul play. The destroyed phone, vandalized cameras, and untouched personal belongings painted a clear picture of premeditated criminal activity. Within hours of reviewing the evidence, Chun officially reclassified Keisha's case from a missing person report to a potential abduction investigation. She assembled a dedicated task force and began treating this as the serious crime it clearly was. Before we continue with what Detective Chun discovered next, I need you to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This case is about to take turns that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about personal safety and community protection. Comment below and tell me, what's your daily routine that people could literally set their clocks by? Do you take the same route to work every day? Do you go to the gym at the same time? Keisha's predictable schedule, something that brought comfort to her neighbors, may have been exactly what made her a target. The investigation was about to reveal evidence that would shock even seasoned detectives. As September turned to October, then November, and eventually into 2020, the leads in Keisha Williams' case began to dry up like autumn leaves. Detective Chun followed every tip, interviewed every potential witness, and pursued every possible connection, but each investigation led to another dead end. The forensic evidence from the destroyed phone yielded nothing useful, and despite offering a $10,000 reward, no credible witnesses came forward. The task force that had been assembled with such urgency was gradually reassigned to newer cases. Resources became scarce, and the daily briefings about Keisha's disappearance became weekly, then monthly updates. The local news stations that had once featured Keisha's story prominently during primetime broadcasts began relegating updates to brief mentions during late-night segments. Her missing person flyers, once crisp and new on every street corner, became weathered and torn, eventually replaced by advertisements for local businesses and upcoming community events. Social media algorithms moved on to newer tragedies and trending topics. The hashtag #FindKeishaWilliams, which had once generated thousands of shares and comments daily, now received only occasional posts from family members and a few dedicated community supporters. The digital footprint of her disappearance was slowly being buried under the constant stream of online content. By March of 2021, 18 months after Keisha's disappearance, her case officially received cold case status within the Atlanta Police Department. This designation meant that while the file remained open, no active resources would be dedicated to the investigation unless new evidence emerged. The case was transferred from Detective Chun's active caseload to the Cold Case Division, where it joined hundreds of other unsolved disappearances and homicides. The Williams family received a formal letter explaining this change in status, along with assurances that any new information would be thoroughly investigated. For them, this official acknowledgement felt like watching their daughter disappear all over again. Despite the official status change, the East Point community refused to let Keisha's memory fade completely. Every few months, volunteers would organize smaller search parties, focusing on areas that had been previously overlooked or newly accessible due to construction or seasonal changes. Church groups continued to hold prayer vigils on the anniversary of her disappearance, and local businesses kept her photo displayed in their windows. However, even the most dedicated supporters began to feel the weight of time. Hope, once burning bright in the hearts of hundreds of volunteers, had dimmed to a flickering flame maintained by only the most faithful few. Detective Chun faced increasing pressure from her supervisors to focus on newer cases with better prospects for resolution. Department statistics showed that missing person cases unsolved after 2 years had less than a 5% chance of being resolved, and resources needed to be allocated more efficiently. Despite these pressures, Chun kept Keisha's file on her desk rather than boxing it away in storage. She continued to review the evidence during quiet moments, hoping to spot something that had been missed. Chun had developed a personal connection to the case that went beyond professional duty, often thinking about Keisha during her own morning runs through Atlanta. While the official investigation stalled, a predator named Jerome Mitchell was living what appeared to be an ordinary life in College Park, just 15 miles from where Keisha had vanished. The 34-year-old worked as a maintenance supervisor for Peachtree Property Management, a company that oversaw dozens of apartment complexes throughout the Atlanta metropolitan area. To his coworkers and neighbors, Mitchell seemed like a quiet, unremarkable man who kept to himself and did his job competently. What nobody knew was that Mitchell had been using his position to gain unauthorized access to tenant information, studying the daily routines of young women across multiple properties with methodical precision. Mitchell's maintenance position provided him with master keys to hundreds of apartment units, access to tenant lease applications containing personal information, and legitimate reasons to be present in residential areas at all hours. He had studied the schedules of security guards, learned which buildings had functioning cameras, and identified blind spots in parking lots and common areas. His work van, equipped with ladders and tools, allowed him to blend seamlessly into any neighborhood without raising suspicion. Residents were accustomed to seeing maintenance vehicles parked outside their buildings, making Mitchell practically invisible as he conducted what he privately called his research projects on unsuspecting women. Mitchell had developed an elaborate system for tracking the movements of women who caught his attention. He would follow them from their apartments to their workplaces, noting the times they left and returned, which routes they preferred, and whether they maintained consistent schedules. He kept detailed notebooks filled with observations about their habits, relationships, and vulnerabilities. Keisha Williams had first appeared in his notes 6 months before her disappearance, after he had spotted her jogging through a neighborhood where he was completing maintenance work. Her predictable morning routine and isolated running path had made her what he considered a perfect target for his increasingly dangerous fantasies. In January of 2020, 4 months after Keisha's disappearance, Mitchell rented a storage unit at Secure Space Storage on Old National Highway under the false name David Thompson. He paid in cash and provided fake identification that he had purchased through online channels. The 10x10 unit became his private museum of obsession, filled with photographs, personal items, and detailed surveillance notes about multiple women. Mitchell visited this storage unit twice weekly, always during off-peak hours when few other customers were present. He treated these visits like sacred rituals, spending hours organizing his collection and planning future activities that grew increasingly bold and dangerous. Several incidents during this period should have raised red flags, but without knowledge of Mitchell's true activities, they appeared unrelated to law enforcement. 3 different women reported feeling like they were being followed during their morning exercise routines, but each report was filed separately across different jurisdictions. Security cameras at 2 apartment complexes were mysteriously damaged on nights when Mitchell had been scheduled for maintenance work. A storage facility employee later recalled a customer who always paid in cash and seemed nervous during transactions, but this information was never connected to any ongoing investigations. The pieces of Mitchell's criminal pattern were scattered across multiple police departments and private businesses. On November 22, 2022, exactly 3 years and 2 months after Keisha Williams had vanished during her morning jog, a phone call came into the College Park Police Department that would finally crack the case wide open. At 11:47 in the morning, a motorist named Patricia Johnson reported an abandoned vehicle that had been running in the parking lot of the defunct South Lake Shopping Center for what appeared to be several days. Johnson explained to the dispatcher that she had noticed the car on Sunday evening while visiting a nearby restaurant, and it was still there Tuesday morning with the engine running and no driver in sight. When officers Martinez and Thompson arrived at the scene, they expected to find a typical case of vehicle abandonment or perhaps a medical emergency. Instead, they discovered a silver Honda Accord with Georgia license plates that immediately triggered recognition in Officer Martinez's memory. He had seen those plates on missing person bulletins that still circulated through police departments across the metro area. A quick radio check confirmed their suspicions. This was the vehicle belonging to Keisha Williams, the young woman who had disappeared during her morning run over 3 years earlier. The car that had been sitting untouched in her family's driveway was now 15 miles away in an abandoned shopping center. The Honda's engine was still running when officers approached, but the fuel gauge showed it was nearly empty. Based on the car's fuel efficiency and tank capacity, Investigators later calculated that the vehicle had been running continuously for approximately 48 hours. The air conditioning was on full blast despite the cool November weather, and the radio was tuned to a gospel station that Keisha's family confirmed she never listened to. Steam rose from the overheated engine as officers cautiously approached the driver's side window. The car had clearly been sitting in this exact spot for days, yet no one had reported it until Patricia Johnson's observant phone call that Tuesday morning. As Officer Martinez peered through the driver's side window, he immediately called for backup, and the medical examiner. Slumped over the steering wheel was the body of a black male, approximately 30 to 40 years old, wearing a maintenance uniform with a name tag that read Jerome. The man had been dead for what appeared to be several days, based on the visible signs of decomposition. The victim's hands were positioned on the steering wheel as if he had been driving when death occurred. There were no obvious signs of struggle inside the vehicle, but a dark stain on the driver's seat suggested the presence of blood that had soaked through the fabric. The scene defied logical explanation. How had Keisha Williams' car, missing for over 3 years, suddenly appeared 15 miles from her home with a dead stranger behind the wheel? Why was the engine still running? And who was this Jerome Mitchell whose identification was found in the victim's wallet? The car's interior had been meticulously cleaned, yet it reeked of industrial-strength chemicals that burned the officer's nostrils. Detective Chun, who had never stopped thinking about Keisha's case, received the call at 12:30 that afternoon. After 3 years of dead ends and cold leads, the breakthrough she had been hoping for had finally arrived in the most unexpected and puzzling way imaginable. The medical examiner's preliminary examination revealed that Jerome Mitchell had died from a single gunshot wound to the back of his head, execution style. The bullet had entered at close range, suggesting the shooter had been either sitting directly behind Mitchell or standing beside the driver's side door. Despite the obvious cause of death, no weapon was found anywhere in or around the vehicle. The trajectory of the bullet indicated that Mitchell had been looking straight ahead when he was shot, possibly unaware of his killer's presence. There were no defensive wounds on his hands or arms, suggesting he had not fought back or even seen the attack coming before it was too late. Forensic technicians discovered that Keisha's Honda had been thoroughly cleaned with industrial-grade chemicals typically used in crime scene remediation. Every surface had been scrubbed with bleach-based solutions strong enough to eliminate most biological evidence. The car's interior had been shampooed, the trunk had been steam cleaned, and even the engine compartment showed signs of detailed cleaning. However, despite these extensive efforts, Jerome Mitchell's DNA was found throughout the vehicle, on the steering wheel, gear shift, door handles, and seat adjustments. Hair fibers matching Mitchell were discovered in the carpet, and his fingerprints were lifted from surfaces that had apparently been missed during the cleaning process. Someone had tried very hard to erase evidence, but had not been completely successful. A search of Mitchell's apartment led investigators to discover a key hidden inside a hollowed-out book on his nightstand. The key belonged to Storage Unit 47 at Secure Space Storage, rented under the false name David Thompson. When Detective Chun and her team cut the lock and rolled up the metal door, they found a horrifying shrine to obsession that would haunt them for years to come. The 10x10 space contained detailed surveillance photographs of dozens of women, including multiple images of Keisha Williams jogging through her neighborhood. Notebooks filled with handwritten observations documented their daily routines, work schedules, and personal relationships. Most disturbing of all were Keisha's running clothes, jewelry, and personal items that had been missing since her disappearance. Mitchell's journals revealed the terrifying extent of his obsession with Keisha Williams. Beginning in March of 2019, 6 months before her disappearance, he had documented her every movement with methodical precision. He knew she left for work at 7:45 each morning, stopped at Starbucks on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and visited her parents every Sunday after church. The entries grew increasingly detailed and disturbing over time. Mitchell had learned Marcus's work schedule, identified which neighbors were home during the day, and even noted when the Williams family went out of town. His final entry, dated September 14, 2019, contained a detailed plan for what he called the collection, scheduled for the following morning. The most shocking discovery came when ballistics results revealed that the bullet that killed Jerome Mitchell had been fired from a Smith & Wesson revolver registered to Robert Williams, Keisha's own father. The gun, which Robert had purchased legally 15 years earlier for home protection, had somehow ended up being used to execute his daughter's apparent abductor in her own car. Detective Chun immediately obtained a warrant to search the Williams family home, but the weapon was nowhere to be found. Robert Williams appeared genuinely shocked when confronted with the ballistics evidence, insisting that his gun had been locked in a safe in his bedroom closet. When they checked the safe together, it was empty. The final piece of this complex puzzle came from an unexpected source. Jerome Mitchell's own paranoia had led him to install hidden cameras throughout his apartment to monitor for potential intruders. These cameras, connected to a cloud storage service that Mitchell had forgotten to cancel, contained footage that would finally reveal the complete truth about what happened to Keisha Williams and how her father's gun ended up killing her abductor. The crucial footage, timestamped November 20th, 2022, showed Mitchell returning to his apartment around midnight, visibly agitated and constantly checking over his shoulder. He appeared to be fleeing from something or someone, hastily packing a bag while muttering to himself about needing to disappear. The camera footage revealed how Robert Williams' weapon had ended up in Mitchell's possession. 3 months earlier, in August of 2022, Mitchell had broken into the Williams family home while they attended Keisha's memorial service on the 3rd anniversary of her disappearance. The footage from his apartment showed him cleaning and examining the stolen revolver, apparently planning to use it in future crimes. Mitchell had specifically targeted Robert's gun because he knew it would create confusion and potentially implicate Keisha's family if it were ever discovered. His journals contained detailed notes about the Williams family schedule and their annual memorial traditions, which he had used to plan the perfect time for the break-in. The most shocking revelation came in the final minutes of Mitchell's apartment footage. On November 20th, 3 men wearing dark clothing and masks entered his apartment while he was packing. The audio was clear enough to hear one of them say, "You took our daughter, our sister, our community's heart." Mitchell begged for his life, offering to reveal where he had hidden Keisha's body in exchange for mercy. The masked figures forced Mitchell at gunpoint to drive to the location where he had buried Keisha 3 years earlier. The community had discovered Mitchell's identity through their own investigation and had decided to take justice into their own hands when the legal system failed to find their missing daughter. The hidden cameras captured Mitchell's confession as he was forced to reveal that he had buried Keisha's body in a remote wooded area near Sweetwater Creek State Park, 20 miles south of Atlanta. He admitted to abducting her during her morning jog, holding her captive for 3 days in an abandoned warehouse, and killing her when she attempted to escape. The masked men forced Mitchell to drive Keisha's car, which he had kept hidden in a storage garage, to the abandoned shopping center. There, using Robert Williams' own gun in a symbolic act of justice, they executed the man who had destroyed their community's sense of safety and stolen one of their brightest lights. Despite the clear evidence of vigilante justice, the Atlanta District Attorney's Office faced an impossible decision. The community members who had killed Mitchell were never identified, as they had worn masks and gloves throughout the entire operation. The investigation revealed that Mitchell had been responsible for at least 6 other disappearances of young women across Georgia and Alabama over the past 5 years. Keisha's remains were recovered from a location Mitchell had revealed, finally giving the Williams family the closure they had desperately needed. While the official case remained technically unsolved regarding Mitchell's murder, prosecutors quietly decided not to pursue charges against unknown perpetrators who had eliminated a serial predator that the system had failed to catch. The investigation into Mitchell's storage unit and apartment revealed evidence linking him to multiple unsolved disappearances across the Southeast. DNA evidence connected him to the cases of Maria Santos in Birmingham, Alabama, and Jennifer Clark in Savannah, Georgia, both young women who had vanished during their morning exercise routines in 2018 and 2020 respectively. His journals contained surveillance notes on over 30 different women, complete with photographs, daily schedules, and what he called vulnerability assessments. Law enforcement agencies across 4 states reopened cold cases that matched Mitchell's pattern of targeting young, athletic women who maintained predictable routines. The scope of his crimes was far more extensive than anyone had initially realized. On December 15, 2022, Keisha Williams was finally laid to rest in a beautiful ceremony attended by over 800 community members. The service celebrated her life, her dreams, and the impact she had made on everyone who knew her. Her family found peace knowing that her killer would never harm another woman, even though the circumstances of that justice remained officially unresolved. The Williams family established the Keisha Williams Foundation, dedicated to providing personal safety education and self-defense classes for young women in underserved communities. Marcus Thompson, who had never stopped loving Keisha, became the foundation's first executive director, channeling his grief into protecting others from experiencing similar tragedies. The East Point community transformed Riverside Park, where Keisha had begun her final jog, into a memorial garden in her honor. A bronze statue of a young woman in running attire was installed along the main path, with an inscription reading, "In memory of Keisha Williams and all those who run toward their dreams." The memorial became a gathering place for morning joggers and a symbol of the community's resilience. Local schools implemented the Keisha Williams Safety Program, teaching students about personal awareness and the importance of varying their routines. Her story became a powerful tool for educating young people about recognizing potential threats while encouraging them to pursue active, healthy lifestyles without living in fear. Keisha's case led to important changes in how communities approach personal safety education. Law enforcement agencies began emphasizing the dangers of maintaining completely predictable routines, especially for people who exercise alone in isolated areas. Safety experts recommended varying routes and times, carrying personal alarms, and using buddy systems whenever possible. The case also highlighted the importance of trusting family instincts when someone goes missing. The Williams family's immediate recognition that Keisha's disappearance was out of character, combined with their refusal to accept dismissive police responses, ultimately led to the investigation that exposed Mitchell's crimes. Their persistence saved other potential victims by preventing Mitchell from continuing his predatory activities for years longer. Today, the Williams family continues to honor Keisha's memory through their foundation work and community advocacy. Robert and Diane Williams have become powerful voices for families of missing persons, speaking at conferences and working with law enforcement agencies to improve initial response protocols. They emphasize the importance of taking every missing person report seriously, regardless of assumptions about voluntary disappearance. Marcus Thompson eventually found love again, but never forgot his first love. He married in 2024 and named his daughter Keisha Marie in honor of the woman who had taught him the true meaning of unconditional love. The Williams family welcomed Marcus's new family with open arms, understanding that healing doesn't mean forgetting. Keisha's case prompted significant improvements in local security measures and community safety protocols. The East Point Police Department implemented new policies requiring immediate investigation of missing person reports when family members insist the disappearance is out of character. Security camera maintenance became a priority for local businesses, with regular inspections to prevent the type of systematic vandalism that had helped Mitchell avoid detection. Property management companies across Atlanta revised their employee screening processes and implemented stricter controls over master key access. The case demonstrated how predators could exploit legitimate employment opportunities to target victims, leading to industry-wide changes that made communities safer for everyone, especially young women living alone. What did you think of this incredible story of community justice and family determination? Keisha Williams' case shows us that sometimes the system fails, but love and persistence can still find a way to bring closure and protect others. Have you ever felt like someone was watching your daily routine? Or do you know someone who might be too predictable in their habits? Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss these powerful true crime stories. Share this video to spread awareness about personal safety, and comment below with your thoughts on how communities can better protect their most vulnerable members. Your engagement helps these important stories reach people who need to hear them.